I want to thank Senator Lautenberg. I was also listening to Senator Mikulski and Senator Kerry and Senator Bigeman on their comments to try to bring some common sense to our election laws, basically disclosing who contributes to the political process. That's something that Democrats and Republicans have been together on for a long time. I don't know what's happening right now, why this seems to be an issue that doesn't get bipartisan support. I particularly want to thank Senator Whitehouse for his leadership on this issue. He has been talking about this matter of disclose along with Senator Schumer since the Supreme Court decision in 2010, the Citizens United decision. I must tell you, Mr. President, I think the Citizens United decision will go down as one of the worst decisions in the history of the Supreme Court of the United States. I say that for many reasons. First and foremost, for those that are students of our judicial system and our constitutional separation of powers, will understand that the case that went up to the Supreme Court was a pretty narrow case based upon a documentary, a 30-minute documentary. And in that decision, in Citizens United, the court ruled in a very broad way, ruling that a corporation has all the rights of an individual in our political system. First time, reversing the legislation that had been passed by Congress. The framers of our Constitution envisioned that it was the legislative branch of government that would make our laws and policies. And the legislature, after a great deal of debate and after many different attempts, passed laws that restrict how much money corporations could put in our political system and how they had to do it in a very open manner, in a very transparent manner. And then we had a reform bill known as the McCain-Feingold bill that spelled out certain restrictions. And then all these cases have been upheld. These laws have been upheld over a long period of time by court decisions. And then in Citizens United, the court not only substituted itself for the legislature, but reversed its own precedent on ruling that corporations could literally put unlimited amount of money into our political system. It was, as I said, one of the worst decisions, I think, in the history of the Supreme Court. It has now unleashed unlimited money in our political system. What corporations and undisclosed sources can now put into our elections will dwarf what individual contributors will make available in the political season. The Center for Responsive Politics has now said that super PACs and their related organizations have already spent over twice what similar groups spent 4 years ago. So we not only have this unleashing of undisclosed corporate funds, we're now seeing the super PACs taking over as the major source of funding of campaigns. So as Senator Mikulski just said on the floor, it's one thing when we run for office, we solicit contributions. Every one of those contributors are listed on our reports. We make quarterly reports so that the people of the nation know who's financing our campaigns. They will not know who's financing these ads that are going to appear on television from these Citizen United type political activities where you don't know where the money's coming from. It could come from a single source who wishes to influence our political system but does not want to be identified in the cause. I really think this compromises our democratic system. I think that an individual could literally distort our political system through the use of money. And that's something I would hope all of us would be concerned about. Now, Mr. President, I tell you, I'm now a believer. I think the only thing we can do to overturn the Citizens United case is to support Senator Tom Udall's constitutional amendment. That amendment gives the Congress the power we thought we had to legislate. I think the people of Maryland, the people of West Virginia, the people of our nation would be surprised to learn that we can't legislate the limits of what people can contribute in campaigns. They think that's our responsibility, not the courts. Well, Senator Tom Udall's amendment would give us the power to do that, overturning the Citizens United case. And I would hope we could come together to let us have the power we should. It seems to me that's something that both Democrats and Republicans in this body should agree on, that those decisions should be made in the Congress of the United States, not in the Supreme Court or the courts of our land. The bill that we have before us, and I urge my colleagues to let us move forward, the Disclose Act, brings transparency into the campaign finance system. Many of us talk about transparency frequently. Transparency is the most important part of integrity in our system. That's how we talk about a lot of other countries adding transparency to the way they do business. Well, we should have transparency in one of the most fundamental parts of our system, and that's how we conduct our elections. It's key to a democracy. It was Justice Brandeis who said, "Sunlight is said to be the best disinfectant." I don't understand why we would resist the public knowing who's contributing money to influence our political system. This Disclose Act has bipartisan support, the League of Women Voters, the Democracy 21, People for an American Way. Let me quote, if I might, from a letter recently sent to Congress by a nonprofit, nonpartisan campaign legal center. It says, "Hundreds of millions of dollars will be spent to influence the outcome of elections over the next 4 months. Neither the candidates being attacked with these millions of dollars nor the public will have a complete, accurate, meaningful information about the sources of such money. Only the contributors and the beneficiaries will be in the know. Passage of 3369 will mean that in future election cycles, those funding these shadow campaigns will be disclosed to the public so the voters can make informed decisions at the poll." The letter goes on to say, as we get closer to the 2012 elections, the amount of federal campaign-related spending using funds from undisclosed sources continues to rise. Especially troubling is the lack of transparency regarding the expenditure of so-called Section 501c groups this election cycle, such as Priorities USA and Crossroads GPS. Mr. President, I've heard some of my colleagues say, well, can we constitutionally do this? Is this allowed for us? After all, Citizens United sort of says that anything goes. Well, let me quote from the Citizens United decision, where the court wrote, this is very interesting, "Prompt disclosures of expenditures can provide shareholders and citizens with the information needed to hold corporations and elected officials accountable for their positions and supporters. Shareholders can determine whether their corporation's political speech advances the corporation's interest in making profits, and citizens can see whether elected officials are in the pocket of so-called moneyed interest. The First Amendment protects political speech, and disclosure permits citizens and shareholders to react to the speech of corporate entities in a proper way. This transparency enables the electorate to make informed decisions and gives proper weight to the different speakers and messages." That's the Supreme Court speaking in Citizens United. So, Mr. President, we clearly have the authority to move at least this modest step forward to get to allow the American people to see who are making these contributions so they can make an informed judgment on Election Day. We owe that to the citizens of this country to take up and pass the Disclose Act. And once again, Mr. President, I want to thank my colleague who's now on the floor, Senator Whitehouse, for his leadership on this issue. As I said earlier, from day one, when the Supreme Court issued its decision, it was Senator Whitehouse who immediately observed that we've got to do something to make sure that those who use this process to influence our system, that information is disclosed so the public has the information they need in order to properly judge our elections. And with that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.